Tens of thousands of people have been out on the streets across Israel tonight as unions there call for a general strike tomorrow in protest at the government's failure to secure the release of more than 100 hostages still being held by Hamas. The bodies of 6 hostages were recovered by the Israeli army this weekend. The IDF say they were discovered in a tunnel in Rafah in southern Gaza. Israel says they had been murdered in the last few days. Hamas claim they were killed by Israeli airstrikes. Our Middle East correspondent Lucy Williamson reports now on the growing pressure on Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
Hamas would protect them as assets, the argument went. These younger, fitter hostages were the ones who would survive. Instead, Israel's army says they were shot by Hamas in a tunnel under Rafah as Israeli forces battled above them. Almog Sarusi, Alexander Lobanov, Ori Danino, Eden Yerushalmi, whose last words to her sister were, "They've caught me," and Hirsch Goldberg Polin, a 23-year-old US-Israeli citizen, and Carmel Gatt, a therapist who was described by other hostages as their guardian angel. Carmel's family said she and Hirsch were due to be released in a deal outlined in July. Her cousin today, inconsolable.
It's too late for us. It's too late for Carmel. I will never hug her again. But 101 people can still hug their families. For them, make the deal. Save lives.
As pressure on Israel's Prime Minister builds, today he blamed Hamas for the failure to free the hostages.
While Israel is conducting intensive negotiations with the mediators in a supreme effort to reach a deal, Hamas continues to firmly refuse any offer. He who murders hostages does not want a deal.
A red flag at the protest today, a message to the Prime Minister. The last red line has been crossed. Hostages were dying, they said, as a direct result of the Prime Minister's failure to sign a deal.
Outside Mr. Netanyahu's office today, they've been shouting murderer. Many people here think he simply doesn't want a deal. And if a deal is no longer possible, they say, then the hostages are no longer valuable to Hamas.
Hostages do not return when guns are shooting. The region does not go quiet for the time necessary to return hostages when guns are shooting.
The irony is that fighting did stop in central areas of Gaza today for the start of a 9-day rolling vaccine program delivered by the UN. The discovery of Gaza's first case of polio in 25 years, the only thing that's paused the fighting since November. Thank God they've agreed on this, said Khalil, but we hope the war stops completely and not just for a couple of days. We've suffered a lot. In Tel Aviv tonight, these 6 deaths sparked new life in the protest movement pushing for a ceasefire deal. Tens of thousands on the streets, confronting Benjamin Netanyahu with a choice. Peace in Gaza or war at home.
Well, Israel's labor union has now announced a 1-day strike for tomorrow. It's expected to affect some public transport, some schools, hospitals and private businesses, and some of the flights out of the airport tomorrow morning might be affected as well. Israel's far-right finance minister is worried enough that he's asked the Attorney General to block the strike. But of course the government won't just be worried about the economic impacts of this. They'll be worried about the growing political pressure as well.